Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm absolutely delighted to have Nancy Rebecca with me today, and a lot of you might have met Nancy already through her wonderful conversations with Pam Gregory about the blue light beings and the blue light frequencies that are coming to us at this time. But for those of you that don't know Nancy, she's a healer, a psychic, a teacher, and an expert in reading the human energy field. Nancy is a retired registered nurse who communicates with blue light beings, offering powerful insights into our rapid evolving consciousness. She's extremely psychic and teaches intuitive and psychic development with a deep focus on the human energy system. And through her regular energy updates on her YouTube channel, Nancy helps guide others through the subtle and not so subtle shifts that are happening on the planet right now. So today we're going to be talking about light codes and how they're landing and activating our DNA and awakening our original undistorted selves. So really delighted to have you on the podcast, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So for having me on. And I know this is Spirit looks forward to any opportunity to bring through support during this big shift that we're going through, very exciting shift. And then not so exciting at the same time, because our human bodies, they're really built for this time. They just don't know it. And so it's almost like, we're trying to kind of reprogram our thinking and reprogram our bodies to remember just so much what they are capable of doing with these new frequencies. So.
Yeah, and we're all feeling it. We're all feeling those frequencies moving through. It's not like it kind of escapes some people. We're all going through this process. So it's an incredible journey.
Yeah.
I'd love to just start right back, because in terms of, where your psychic and spiritual journey started and how you first connected with the blue light beings, because that was kind of like a turning point for you with this work.
Yeah, I've been fortunate or not so fortunate to have several turning points in my life. And I really think that that's it for everybody. We get to a certain pass and then it just, things seem to shift dramatically. So the first was 30 years ago, working as a nurse. I was an intensive care open heart recovery nurse. And then I had been asked to go to hospice to teach hospice about end-of-life care for people with heart and lung disease. So I had only been meant to go there temporarily. I ended up loving it. I ended up staying. And I know that sounds a bit odd about loving it, but the thing about being, a hospice nurse and being, intimately involved with families in the dying process, all the pretenses are shed. All the egos shed. You have nothing left to, I don't know that it's being concerned about, but it's just like you don't give a rip anymore. It's like you're going to say what you're going to say, you're going to feel what you're going to feel, you're going to be honest. And I loved that rawness, which really was very challenging. And then I had my own 3 family members in the dying process. And when I share that story, it's about coping. I was losing my ability to cope. And that's really what we're going through right now, 30 years later. We're really losing, or feel like we're losing, our ability to cope. But what we don't realize is that there are better ways underneath it to cope. And the sooner we can let go of that, our old coping, the better. And, the faster that we can just move to work with new coping mechanisms. So what happened was, in 30 years ago, it was hard to find help. And but I knew I went and got a meditation book. I had that sense to get a meditation book, and I hid it in a brown paper bag, and I hid it behind all my books on the bookshelf. I was so afraid my husband would find out, or that any of my friends would find out that I was toying with meditation. And it was from that first chapter in the first 5 minutes of following the instructions that I did have a spontaneous out of body experience. Now, often it's very similar to a near death experience, but I wasn't dying a death. It wasn't like a drowning or, having a heart attack. But the death was, I was dying to myself, my old self. So there was a flash of light. I did see a tunnel. I did end up outside of myself. I did travel. I was communicated with, other beings. So all of those elements were still there. And if I were to kind of relate it now to what we're going through, it is almost like an old part of us is dying to ourselves, and a new self is emerging. It's not coming in, it's already there, but we're just kind of dusting off, uh, the buildup of just living life. So at that time, there was a voice when I came back into my body. I was suddenly sighted, but more than that, I could hear people's thoughts. I could see spiritual beings. I knew things, and even though I had all those beautiful things going on that anybody would pay a high price for, my human body was absolutely terrorized, terrified, fearful, anxious, panicky, because my mind could not conceive that anything like this could be possible. So none of that's changed. What's changed is my mind's ability to know that everything I experienced was real, and how to cultivate that into my life. And I know all your listeners, anybody who's going to tune in, when you start building in your sensitivities, then you kind of become comfortable with them, and then another level comes up. I think for me, I had all those abilities, but I wasn't very confident in myself. I would say I had a very low self-esteem. I was very much I cared a lot and was concerned a lot about others, which made me a really good nurse, but not a human that was going to enjoy life very much, for myself. So that happened. So that was very significant. And because I could see in the human body, I could see disease processes happening. And I began to realize you could shift energy, and the illness could go away. Now, not all illnesses are as easy to go away, but with any energy work or frequencies, amazing things can happen. So, and I was never into aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot. I knew nothing about star beings. Absolutely. I had never even heard that term. So when I was meditating, I have a meditation room devoted to meditation. And so, I had that privacy, but it was just, I heard a high pitched sound, and then it sounded like an airplane landing. I felt like the pressure, like the cabin pressure, in my ear. Like it was a lot of things. I had a full body response, like, what's happening? My eyes are closed. And it all happened so fast. And then it felt like the room suddenly was full. And I opened my eyes because I can see almost better with my eyes open. And that's when I saw about 12 very tall, I could say between 7 to 12 feet tall in variation, very blue, very iridescent, very beautiful. And at the same time, I just was like, can I help you? It'd be like somebody knocking on your door, oh, this package was delivered to the wrong house and I'm bringing it. That's what it felt like. And that's really how it started. I couldn't understand them in English, so it was like I would hear different tones. Eventually, those tones turned more into dolphin, whale type tones. And then it would just be like this boom, this download. And the download was, we need you to go to China. There's a blue light coming that's going to shift the world. And we need you to go to China to get the prophecy. It wasn't like, hello, my name is Blue Light Being.
No small talk.
How are you?
They go to China.
Would you like a cup of tea? I mean, it was nothing like that. And, but I could feel that it wasn't optional. And I know, and you're probably very aware, it's always optional. But life may not be very comfortable if you're supposed to move forward with something.
The highest path. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what happened. I went to China and I got the prophecy.
I happened to be listening to one of your talks earlier and about how you went round a lot of Taoist masters.
Yeah.
And they were all telling you that the wisdom was within yourself. And you got to a place where you were just about like, I can't hear this one more time. You were just about to go home. And you went to one last Taoist master. And I just thought it was an incredible story. I also have to share that that's my, I've worked with Master Mantak, Taoist master for 20 years.
I've read all of his books.
Yeah, I love Taoism. And it's really interesting because I had Hope Fitzgerald before you, who's been on Pam's podcast, and Master Mantak before that, and then Pam Gregory. And when I was listening to your podcast today, I thought there's something going on here that's just too uncanny that you're talking about Taoist masters.
Well, and I did not know that in China, I would not be considered odd. It's people go to psychics. It's just a part of their, they may have divination where they throw they look like little chopsticks that have certain symbols on them. Like there's so acupuncture, acupressure, different channelings, channeling energy. They do all of those things, but I was not familiar with any of that. So when they began testing me, when I travel around here, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows what I do. Nobody cares. If you said, "Oh, I'm a full-time psychic," oh, that's nice, Well, I've got to go.
That's part of the culture.
But there,
yes.
It's like, all right. So they asked me to read, this person. Okay, now read that person. Now read that person. Now read that person. And I don't think that people, maybe they're not so familiar as a psychic. When you're holding a focus to bring through psychic information, your pineal really lights up. And the energy is like a laser light. I mean, this is how I'll describe it for me. And then that laser light hones in on what I'm supposed to share. Well, it's like, holding 100-pound weights, for a long period of time. Eventually, you just need to put them down. There was one Buddhist master, head of this enormous temple. And when I just asked if I could have a little bit of a break, like this is a lot of energy for me. And he just walked out. He was just, I mean, they were rude. Well, I wasn't totally rude, but he just couldn't be bothered if I wasn't going to give him the information that he wanted, but I didn't have the information. The only information I had was go to China, get the prophecy. What's so interesting is it was his temple where the prophecy came through.
That was the
not the end one, but the one in Xi'an, China. And the prophecy that came through was that there would be 3 surges of blue light, and they would be enormous surges that would be coming through 3 different pyramids. And I was given the dates of November 2019. I didn't know when the date would be in 2021, and it turned out to be November in 2021. I didn't know the date in 2023, but it turned out to be again in November. I don't know the significance of that, but they would come through and be amplified by pyramids. And they had told me that the first pyramid it would come through would be in China, and I did not know China had pyramids. I now know that we have pyramids all over the world, but there's several large ones that are aligned with Orion's belt, and that's where it first came through. But yes, the last master that I met, I just wanted to go home at that point. I was just to be a month, and not really. I knew if the star beings wanted me to go to China, I knew the answers would be there. I've done this long enough to know it was not going to be a futile trip. Something would come out of it. So I couldn't believe I was down to my last 24 hours and nothing had happened. So when I met him and he just burst into blue, he moved his energy around, and he wanted to see if I could see it change. And then he started talking to me telepathically. He wanted to hear if I could hear his telepathic message, which I was able to do all of those things. And then he just told me I was right on track. He still couldn't tell me what I was supposed to do with the information, but he was able to tell me I was very accurate, and do not ever listen to anybody who tries to tell me otherwise. So sometimes I forget that, Sarah.
So you had that message repeatedly through your whole journey, but with him, it came in a much more beautiful format.
Yes.
that kind of resonated a lot deeper. How beautiful.
Yeah. And he had never, for 3 years, he had never allowed guests. He hadn't, and that's why they told me you have to see him, because he's willing to see you, and he has not been willing to see anybody for 3 years. So
amazing.
Yeah.
That's a message for all of us, though, really, isn't it? That listening to ourselves, at this time, that's the shift that we're all going through, from externalized power to sovereignty. And do you feel that the light that's been coming in has been supporting that process?
Well, it's when it first came through, it was like this laser, like a light just cut, like it just cut through layers of density in the earth. And then the light just radiated out through the whole planet. And so that's why I always say none of us can avoid this. None of us are immune to this. It's lovely to think they have choices, but in actuality, when the frequency starts going up, you're going to be impacted by it somehow. It's just like getting in the car and, riding. You're going to be transported to whoever's driving the car. But then the second one that came through, it was more of like a gelatinous fluid, like all of a sudden it was very fluid, and it was very significant in that it was almost like water, but it was like plasma. And it was like being taken to the deepest aspects of the ocean. This is the part that I think remains, it still blows my mind to this day, is to when you go to the depth of the ocean, you can go through a portal at the bottom of the ocean that comes out into outer space, into the galaxy, into stars. So there's this existing portal underneath. So there was this blue coming through, very fluid, and it was really helping to make us fluid as well. And then the third one really threw me for a loop, because I kept asking, is this next pyramid going to be in Egypt? No. Is this, it was like a guessing game. And I could hear the high pitch, but I just wasn't getting it. And then eventually it came through that it was in Hopi land. And they told me that the three mesas used that are pyramids, they've just been worn down through floods on the earth and time, and that they were three pyramids and that they were aligned with Orion's belt. So I went to do my research, and that's exactly what I found.
How amazing.
All three, and Teotihuacan in Mexico was the second one, and all three are aligned with Orion's belt. Now, at the time, people kept asking me, well, who are you talking to? I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, have you asked them this? Have you asked them that? Have you asked them this? And it's not like that. For me, it's not like that. It's like I'm given a set of instructions and I follow through with them. And then they'll, if I need to know a little bit detail about what is coming through. But I did finally ask them, who are you? Which star beings are you? And they were able to explain to me that all star beings can opt to work with blue energy, that it's the frequency of blue. They are not actually blue. They love to work with the frequency of blue, which is pure truth. Wow. Dissolving illusion and bringing justice to the surface. And they said, like, the Lyrans can be blue, or they can be gold or diamond like. You can have the Pleiadians, can be this, that, or the other. Like, all of them can work with blue. So they explained that, but then they did say that they were Syrian, the ones that I was communicating.
That you were connected with
Yeah.
Syrian. And there's no coincidence that the blue light is the chosen light to come through at this time of truth. Yeah. And I know Pam Gregory has been very much talking about that, the kind of dissolving effects of this time.
Yes. And truth is a very curious energy, because we can be really excited about, I'm glad the truth is going to come out, if there's all this noise of the news and the fighting and the wars and, and that will be, revealed, the truth will be revealed. But I don't know that people fully expected their own truths to be coming to the surface, and their own illusions about themselves being dissolved. And I didn't expect it either at that level. And the biggest illusion that humans hold is that they are small and insignificant. And that's the biggest illusion that's being dissolved right now, so that we can recognize our magnificence.
And it takes some courage, doesn't it, to allow this process of dissolving all that old programming, because there's a lot of attachment to it, because particularly if it's come from, ancestrally, it's not just through our life, it's through the whole, to suddenly kind of let that go. It does take a little bit of courage, but that's what we're being called to do at this time, really. And I'd love to talk with you about, because the surges, the 3 surges you spoke about, am I correct in saying that was end of November 23, that those 3 came?
So 219, 221, and then there were 3 surges in 2023. And that's why it took me so long to let that come through my filters, because I was trying to think in terms of a pyramid, and I was thinking in terms of one date. And so that's another testament to, sometimes we'll try to filter things through a channel that we think it needs to go through, and that, unfortunately, that's what I was doing. And then I don't even know how they finally got through to me. But it's like, no, it's 3 dates, it's 3 mesas, it's on Hopi. Yeah.
Amazing. So what's been happening since then? Because I understand that this recently we've been having a massive surge of blue light, like we've never seen, paradigm shattering kind of surge. Is that something you can talk about? Because we've literally just been through that process, or am I skipping something there? Was there been
no
surge in between?
Right. So the blue light has never gone away. And for a while there, they were showing me different places in the earth that they were activating with the blue light. And it was interesting because many of these places never really gave much thought to, never heard of. And it wasn't like they're written in the ancient history books of having sacred sites. But when they would tell me to go to, I can't even remember, which one, there was one in Africa that was incredible about the male and female goddess. And, and they share this information with me. Well, then I go to do the research to find out that there's a sacred, very sacred river there that had been dammed 50 years ago. And so the people have been battling a court to get it opened up because it balances the male and the female. So they were showing me all these different activation points all over the world that they were doing in different countries. So none of that has changed. Sometimes the blue will come in like with a mist. Sometimes it can kind of feel like a jackhammer. And, but what's happened now, every time, it's like getting us ready. It's like an athlete who's an Olympian athlete. Your food's being prepared to optimize.
Training. We're in training.
We're in training. We're going to the gym. It's like drink your blue water. Like all of this, and then it's like now you're ready, and that's how they see it. They see we're ready.
Wow.
They've been preparing us with these frequencies. So there are actually, I've identified blue is one frequency, and emerald green really comes through a lot. And that almost, if you were thinking about like diamond, silver, gold, emerald green, and blue. So that's 5. And you've got 5 tracks, on the racetrack, runners. Sometimes the blues ahead, sometimes the greens ahead, sometimes the diamonds ahead, but it just shifts frequencies like this beautiful orchestra of support for us. And so that's why some people will say, I really connect with the diamond frequency or the gold or the silver, or when I say emerald green, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've only gotten emerald green. I've never gotten blue. So those are the main colors that I see. Definitely
That's really
rose
interesting.
quartz.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Sorry, because this is I haven't heard you talking about this before. And do you feel that an individual's life path and purpose is connected with a certain ray or frequency? Are some people more on a kind of gold frequency path and others more on a blue? And will those individuals then be more influenced by if we're having a blue surge, for example?
So I'll describe it in the term of affinity. So it might be like you can work with the blue light, but you have more of an affinity for silver. So we're all working with all the rays. I do think my sense, okay, So they're explaining to me that we'll say 100 years ago or 200 or 1,000 years ago, the frequency, the way they were, we couldn't be overloaded with so many rays. So many people worked with one ray. What they're saying is our capacity now is to work with all rays. But we will still, if you've had past lives where you worked with blue, like I don't ever remember working with blue. I have a lot of affinity for silver. And so we'll work with all of those will come in. We are ready. We're prepared. We're at a frequency in
Amazing.
humanity. Yeah.
Wow. So we're kind of collecting all those different facets and bringing them together in a way, you know, all those, because they're kind of like, could you see those frequencies almost like lines of wisdom teaching, you know, and then there's a sense of it all coming together to form a diamond now. That's the image.
I wouldn't say that exactly, but not because it's not true. It's just that I have not seen it that way. What comes through, it's like a symphony. It's like, okay, cello, now it's time for you. Okay, flute, it's time for you. And if you're sitting in the audience, you're moved by these certain frequencies. And it's like some of the, resonant, like the cello, for example, that just really touches you deep in the pelvis, and it's like, okay, let's go back up. Let's reactivate the crown. Okay, let's go back down to the middle, of the violin. So it's like a symphony's being played and we're responding to it and we're taking our response and it's helping us to work with our life in a more expanded way.
Beautiful. And I mean, we could liken our our body and our energy body to that symphony, because there's just so much we don't understand, so much communication that's going on. Yeah. So it's like we're starting to light up and play more expansive music, as it were.
Yes. Yes. And enjoy it.
Yeah.
And enjoy it, because this is the part that's hard. Excuse me, is it can be hard on the body. And it's just like, I don't know if you've heard a certain instrument before, but it's just like, oh my gosh, if they play that instrument for one more second, I'm going to scream. I'm going to pull my hair out. And so it could be a high pitched, piccolo. And so, but that's where that high pitched piccolo is shattering some stuck energy. And of course, we don't like it.
Yes.
But it's got to keep going till it shatters and then it drops back down, to the cello again to move it further. I mean, I've 2 nights this week. So we had our big Earth went through the portal. So I'll talk about that again. And it was Monday night evening. And I was just like, I don't feel good and I don't like this. Now, I normally can intuitively sense what's going on, but it was like, it's like those vinyl records. And it's just like this stacked on top of my head. Like so what was happening was the frequency went up and this programming of old black vinyl programming starts lifting up out of my crown chakra. Well, I thought I was going to throw up. My solar plexus starts spasming. My root chakra starts spasming. And I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this. But it was like, I have to breathe. I have to ground. Hopefully I don't get sick. Once in a while I go, I hope I'm not getting a virus, like you hop around, but I just stuck with it and I just lifted all those off and then I felt great again. And then the next night, the same thing happened. So where I like to come from as a nurse is a lot of people think, well, I was just sick or I was just had a headache, but it's like, no, it's all frequency. You're shifting out what no longer serves you. And it might not feel very good when it goes out.
upgrades, and we're all going
Upgrades.
through them. So that was, we went through the portal on the 29th of March 2025, for anyone that's listening this in a few years' time, so they know what year we're talking about. So that was literally, at the time of recording, that was literally about a week ago. So
yes, exactly.
we're still very much in the process. So I'd love if you can talk us through it a little bit, Nancy.
Well, it's interesting, like what people don't realize, the way that I see in pictures. So if I'm thinking about, I was thinking about the equinox because I was having an event on the equinox. So I'm thinking about the equinox. Well, suddenly I'm shown, it's like the sky. So as I'm just talking, like it's just sitting right here in front of me, I'm thinking about the equinox, and I see like a slit or a line. And I'm like, oh, that's curious. I wonder what that is. And then I hear it's a portal. And then it was almost like every day leading up to it for a couple of weeks. Well, I wonder what that's doing now. And I just slowly started to see it open, which is not unusual for portals to open and close around solstices and equinoxes or other special days like Lion's Gate. It's not unusual, but this portal kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the blue beings of light were showing me the earth is moving towards the portal. And it's like, I've got my popcorn, it's like, what the heck's going to happen next?
So
I'm
usually like, when we have a portal, it will just open. So it's like an opening of the veil. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then it will just close. We don't actually go through the veil. We don't go
through information comes through.
Yes, we don't actually pass through it ourselves. No.
And so I was like, no, that is not happening. Don't tell me that's what I'm seeing is happening. And then every day, every moment, I saw it getting closer. It's just like this big mouth that's going to open and just swallow the earth. And that's when I started asking, what is happening? What's going to happen? And how is it going to affect us as humans? And that's when they said, yes, it's happening. Yes, the whole earth is moving to another dimension, and it's going to be gentle. And most people won't even notice that it's happening, except for weird, awkward, funky things happening. And it took a while. It was a 29th, 30th, 31st. It was, and I watched it after the 29th. I had an event. Equinox had an event. It took a while to move through. It is fully in now. So if I were to say, here's the mouth, and the portal's almost closed again to just a slit, and the earth is now, it's moved in further. So we are fully into that new frequency. And so if I could just keep whatever thought. Well, what thought do you have?
No, you carry on. I don't wish to interrupt you. You can carry on.
Well, I just read one of my students' stories where she said she was at work yesterday, and she realized she reached her fingers up and realized one of her earrings, one of her favorite earrings, was missing. And she was at work, so she retraces her footsteps and it's gone. She's very upset because it's an expensive set of earrings. And I can't remember what the whole story is, but she finally just accepted the fact that it was gone, and that it wasn't going to come back. And I don't know if it was that she got home, but she went to find another set of earrings that she could put both in. When she opened it up, both of the earrings, she only lost one. Mm-hmm. So she had taken the other one out, but that also was in the box. Both earrings were in the box at home. And it's like, that's what we can expect to be happening. And that's happening for a lot of people right now.
Kind of outside of time and space as we know it.
Yeah. Or someone said they had a cup of coffee on the counter and then they turned again and it was gone. And then they turned around again like 15 minutes later and it was there again. Or another story, I talked to a man where he was quite rattled. He had just had he and this other car were heading towards each other at 50 miles an hour. You could see the whites of the eyes of both, and the cars literally passed through each other.
Wow. Oh my
And they
goodness.
hit the brakes and they got out, and they just stood there looking at each other like, what just happened? And I asked him, did you know? And he said, I had the thought I'm going to die. This, he just had that thought he was going to die, but he could feel the other car passing through his energy field, because our human energy field is fluid, and our molecular structure is shifting as well.
So that's why we're able to perceive these type of events now.
Not just perceive
Why at this
them.
particular time are we experiencing these kind of
Exactly.
happenings?
And that's going to happen more often. So you just have to pay attention. That's what they keep telling me. Have everyone just pay attention to your environment. We could so absent-mindedly, just kind of walk around throughout our day. And that happened to me, on Monday, where I took my coat off, took my phone out of my coat to put in the front of the car with me, and I set it on the roof, and I heard a voice say, don't set it there, you're going to forget it. And it was like, okay, let me finish getting my coat off and then I'll grab it, but I forgot. And it's exactly what happened. It flew off. So it's like, yeah, there's just a lot happening, and this absent-minded, and I was explaining to everyone, move slower, be very purposeful in your movements, because we're manifesting so much faster than our minds can keep up with.
That's really interesting. When you were speaking about going through the portal earlier, it felt very much like, and this is called New Earth Podcast, and it felt like that birthing process.
Yeah.
Actually in that moment. And I know Pam has been speaking about, I think she uses the term making real the dream, about this kind of early April to mid-April, I believe, period. So how does that translate in terms of, moving through this portal? And was there a surge of blue light at the time as well, end of March, or was it's moving through the portal?
Well, there's definitely a lot of blue around, I would say. And there was the emerald green, there was some silver, there was some gold, there was a lot of diamond light, a lot of that diamond light. And I associate with the diamond light with a group of star beings that visited me. I'd never heard of them before. They call themselves Amma. There's a lot of people that tend to know who Amma is, or what Amma is, or it's Om, like the sound of Om. And they told me that their galaxy is so far away that they don't make trips here, but that they project a hologram of who they are. And it is through frequency. Okay, so I saw a lot of diamond. Everything right now is getting crystallized. So it's starting to, the crystallization is coming down in the third dimensional world to take in this high level of wisdom and knowledge and light codes and sacred geometry and Egyptian hieroglyphics that are just so packed,
Oh, wow.
full of information. It's just like squeezing an orange, and some of the oranges are dry, but this orange is extra juicy. Like the juice just keeps on coming, and that says light codes. And then it's just crystallizing it, kind of holding it in place until we can ground it more, even as humanity. So it's just holding it in place so that it can start to manifest on Earth. But the other odd sort of thing that I noticed were these spheres, these golden luminescent spheres. I'm going to call them creativity codes, but it's like they were transporting this pure light, this elixir, And because I'm a nurse, I think about the Petri dishes. You know what a Petri dish is? So if they want to see if you've got a sinus infection, they might put the little cotton swab and then they swirl it on that medium. Well, that medium looks kind of like an amber color. It's quite squishy, like a gelatin. Well, this is what these spheres look like, but it's a plasma and it accelerates growth. So this is what I think about these not blue plasma, but they look more like an amber iridescent gold, that they accelerate creativity, they accelerate growth, they enhance intuitive psychic development. And so, as you can imagine, I'm watching the earth head towards this. I always think about the wide mouth frog. I don't know if it's like a little folk tale or whatever, but it was like this wide mouth frog. And it's like the earth's going to go past through this mouth, this portal. And at the same time, I'm observing these golden, I call them bubbles.
Wow.
Heading to the earth at the same time. So we are on the other side, but that doesn't mean we've adapted yet. We're in an adaptation phase. But the golden spheres that I call bubbles are some are already clicked into the earth. So they're downloading a lot of light codes. And each individual has a unique system and a unique pattern to them. And so they will align with the unique light codes, hieroglyphics, sacred geometry, frequency that is appropriate for the time that you were built to be here. Does that make sense?
So it's almost like some of those light bubbles are kind of destined for certain individuals. They're kind of holding frequencies that, and then others are kind of more for activating the earth grid or combination. And how do you see that?
Well, I think of it again, affinity is the word that comes up. So when I first started talking about star beings, and someone would say, "Oh, I have a lot of affinity for Pleiadians." I don't have a lot of affinity to Syrians. So it would be like all the Pleiadian people will align with that certain light codes that come in, and all Syrians. So it's just a different affinity. And absolutely, I know that you're onto something, because it awakens the DNA. It opens those gates so that you can take, I call them walking papers, your set of instructions.
Right. Yeah.
And you might be instructed to work with the grids.
It's interesting. So we'll all receive our unique downloads, or remembering in a way.
I like that. Yeah, the rememberings. Yeah, the rememberings. And this morning, I was meditating, and there were a couple of things that came through. One I shared with you just before we came on, and what they were sharing with the truth was, Nancy, you can pretty much say anything, and it's not going to matter that much. I didn't feel insignificant. I was like, okay, explain more. And they said, because we're frequency beings, we are light, and our light is expanding, opening, awakening at higher levels. So we are exchanging frequencies. So, I could talk about Mary Had a Little Lamb, and you're going to hear, any of the listeners going to hear what they need to hear. I'm sure you've noticed this with your clients, where they'll say, "I loved it when you said this or that or the other." And in your mind, you never said that. Have you ever had that experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's
I'm sure
what
I've said that talking about Pam's, because I'm trying to remember what Pam said, and I'm sure I'm not quite translating it in the precise way.
Exactly. So they said that when you and I come on to this podcast, they are able to bring through multiple layers of frequencies and light codes. And then each individual takes in what they need and they leave the rest. The other thing they shared with me this morning was our frequencies are not high or low. Um, oh, yeah, they're not high or low, because they'll say a lot of spiritual people will think, I can handle the higher frequency, and other people it's like, oh, I'm in a low frequency. But they said it's in a fast or slow frequency.
That's
And a slow, I loved how they explained the slow frequency, unfortunately, can allow more room for distortion to come through, doubt, second guessing, perfectionism, not wanting to be seen, that slower frequency. So then I said, well, then, anybody could be at that slower frequency. How would you navigate that? And that's when, if you bring your spirit through, your spirit will help you navigate, because the slower frequency isn't bad. It's not worse. It's just some people are flowing with that frequency for a particular reason. And sometimes it speeds up and sometimes it slows down. But what they said is, when you're connected to your higher self, your own inner wisdom, your inner light, as they call your mighty force of power for change, then no matter what frequency rate you're at, you're going to be fine. And that's what I teach psychic intuitive development. And I'm just like, come on, let's get you built up to start trusting your intuition.
Get you plugged in.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a journey, isn't it? It's a process. It really is.
Yeah,
And,
it really is. It's a beautiful process. It just sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
And I'd love to, we're getting to the end of the podcast. I just checked the time. I thought time's doing interesting things. I thought we were just getting started, and it's been nearly an hour already. I know that you spoke about, we've gone through this phase with these light codes coming in, but we're going to be in the integration phase for quite some time. How can people really start to kind of integrate and not be in resistance to these changes that are occurring?
So the very number one thing at the top of the list, when I've asked the star beings about this, they're like, get in nature. It's like you're going to show up, walk amongst the trees or stand next to a tree, because they're showing me the tree and it connected with the feminine aspects, and the crystallized memories that are awakening in the trees will help attune you, activate you, help you release, help you to integrate. But I also know as a nurse that there's a lot of elderly people who are housebound, and the star beings are they take that into consideration, which I really loved, which they say, have them watch nature shows, have someone get them a plant. If they don't have any plants, get a live plant. And so that's number one. Of course, meditating, but often I've taught this for 25 plus years, you can over meditate, which I don't think a lot of people know that, and throw your body into crisis. So just adapt and pace yourself. Be human. You have to be human. Let yourself have fun. Let yourself have a beer, a smoke, channel surf. There's a lot of, just don't use it. Know why you're using it. Are you using it as an avoidance to not, hey, we all need a break from the noise. But what they're saying is you're here to be human. So be okay with that, but balance it, with our soul side as well. Our soul just wants us to be happy, truly happy. And sometimes, like we drink too much or drug too much, it's because we're not happy. So they just say, how are you using it? Is that chocolate cake going to help you to feel happy? Or for the next 3 days, are you going to feel terrible because you ate sugar? You have to. So they're saying, be human, get in nature, drink lots of water, and start to connect with community, start to surround yourself with, I wouldn't so much say like-minded people, because that's a term that's used a lot, but just people who can love you and respect you for who you are. They don't have to believe in anything that you're doing, but if they can still love you and respect you anyway, those are your people.
I love that you say that, because you're right. We do talk about like-minded souls. And actually, like, I live very rurally in Portugal, and there are all different kinds of people, but it's a place that everyone's allowed to be who they are.
Yeah.
And, we're all quite different. And actually, that's really quite beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they, we're much harder on ourselves. We want to get it right. I mean, you're saving the world, and, we want to get it right. But they told me last week, it was so interesting when they said, hey, you can't get this wrong. And there's nothing you can do now to change the trajectory. It passed through the portal. It's like, we're on our way.
We've done it.
we just have to take really good care of ourselves and be mindful of our intention and desire. I was with my grandson, and we took a little trip to see a university, and he was talking to some of the professors, and I was just sitting and I was watching people go by, and I was just tracking my thoughts. And if I noticed I was being a little critical, or it's like, maybe the husband was bossing the wife around, and I just, it's like, they were like, up, it's their path. It's their path. So they just kept bringing me back to neutral, but it's a good practice for anyone to do, to just sit and people watch and stay neutral and just stay caring. You don't have to love them, but just have care. And it's good practice, because that's where we're going, where we just can respect and care for each other and be kind.
And bringing us into our hearts as well, which is the journey, isn't it? Just having that compassion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's just been absolutely wonderful chatting with you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish up today? Any messages from the blue light beings coming through to help us navigate this current time?
Well, the only thing that I would like to share is that there's a lot about children that are coming up, and what they wanted me to mention that. I'm not the expert on children. I can be, but I'm not. And they said there's a lot of people in the world who are experts on children, and that there's a lot of information wanting to come through about how to support children, and of course, how to support our pets and animals. But their big focus is on a house, pets, and children. So I'm just putting the all call out there. Anybody is welcome to step into that and bring through some information about how to best support our young people.
That's just so important, isn't it? Because they are the new earth. They are the people that are going to be building this new world, really, the architecture of it.
And they already have the frequency, they're just waiting for us to come along, and so, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's been an absolute joy. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.